Hello there. This is the second part of my review of the Lynk Co 01, which I rented as a hire car from OK Mobility at Santander Airport. If you've not watched part 1's got my initial impressions and the first half of our little road trip from Santander to Madrid. So in this video, we're going to do the reverse journey. We'll start off in Madrid, head back up to Santander. There will also be a third and final part to this trilogy where I look at the interior and some of the tech in the Lynk Co 1. Up until this point, we'd covered 709.4 kilometres and averaged 7.5 litres per 100 kilometre. Quickly double checked that trip 2 had been reset for today's journey and checked the remaining range, which was 310 kilometres. Given the misdemeanours that we'd had with the built-in sat-nav, for the return leg we decided to use Apple Maps as our sat-nav rather than Google. Apple Maps has the advantage of the directions being relayed onto the instrument cluster, whereas Google Maps doesn't appear to have that. That became totally relevant almost straight away as we made our way into the tunnel system under Madrid, where, according to the sat-nav, we remained stationary for a good chunk of time, although we were definitely moving. Luckily we didn't have to make any turns under here. The weather on the way back up was a bit better, so the journey was pretty uneventful. After a wee while, we got our warning up to say we only had 100 kilometres of fuel left. The only significant thing that we noticed on the way back up was the highway assist did have a few issues. The highway assist combines the adaptive cruise control and the lane keep assist to keep you in your lane and matching the speed of the traffic round about you, as long as you keep a hold of the steering wheel. And one of the problems wasn't a huge issue, and that's the sign recognition, which kept picking up the signs for the speed limits on slip roads and flashing up alerts on the instrument cluster to say you should be doing 80 when you were still on the motorway and the speed limit was still 120. Now, the highway assist wasn't set up to slow down to that speed limit. It was just a bit irritating that it kept getting the wrong speed limits. Another slight issue was if you got marginally too close to the car in front before you started to pull out to overtake, as you were pulling out to overtake, it would back off and slow you down as you were pulling out to overtake, even though you were part of the way out the lane. So as you were going to overtake a vehicle, sometimes you'd pull out thinking you're going to be doing 120 and it would slow down to maybe 110, which wasn't great when there was vehicles catching up from behind. You could avoid this a bit by turning down the distance to the vehicle in front on the highway assist. So there were 5 different settings for the distance to the car in front. This is setting number 5. Setting 4 lets you get a little bit closer. Unsurprisingly, setting 3, closer still. Setting 2, again, a good bit closer. Setting 1 felt pretty close to the car in front. However, Spanish drivers seem to take that as a perfect gap to pull into. One other thing was if you indicated to pull out, it would gradually pull out, but you did have to stop it from pulling too far over when you were changing lanes. So you did have to put your hands on the steering wheel for that. And I still found it weird that you could feel the steering constantly adjusting itself as you were driving. It did do pretty well at keeping the lanes though. I decided to refuel when the range was shown as 50 kilometres remaining. And at this point we'd only done 175 kilometres. So our 310 kilometre range that was shown in the morning actually turned out to be around about 220. Doing the maths, we'd covered around about 554 kilometres at 7.2 litres per 100 kilometres, which is just under 40 miles per gallon. And that's including using the full charge on the battery. And assuming that we had 50 kilometres of range left, that would have given us a maximum range, including the battery, of just over 600 kilometres, which is somewhere around about 375 miles. Now, this was putting the car on hybrid at the start. I probably could have done slightly better if I'd manually told it to save the battery charge until we were closer into Madrid and used the battery for the slower speed driving as the speed limits dropped for 120. After filling up, the range was optimistically showing 560 kilometres left, although we weren't going to get anywhere near that because I knew I would have to charge the battery a bit so that after I filled up at the end of our journey, I'd have some battery power to allow us to get back to the airport with a full tank. One interesting thing we did discover on the way back up was that you could change the instrument cluster and its configuration by changing the themes in the MMI. We also discovered whilst driving through some of the tunnels that if you adjust the temperature using either of the two dials, when you're turning it up the way, making the temperature hotter, you get a red ring around it, and if you turn it back down, you get a blue ring, which is quite cool. The quickest route back happened to take us onto an A road rather than the motorway, so it was a chance to check out the handling, which was fine, nothing dramatic, nothing to write home about. We also took the opportunity to stop, have a little picnic, and do a 0 to 60. It felt quite sluggish off the line, and there's a chirp of wheel spin later on when it tries to put the power down. Even in its sportiest setting, where it's using both the petrol and the battery power, it did not feel like a 250 odd horsepower car. I'm not sure if that was down to the 1.5 litre 3-cylinder or if it was down to the 7-speed dual clutch. It did feel a bit quicker on the move, but there was a slight delay between putting your foot down and anything meaningful actually happening. Once we were back in Santander, it was time for our final fuel stop before switching to pure mode, which was electric power only, to take us back to the airport. Our journey back then was about 460 kilometres back to Santander Airport. Overall then, for the weekend, we covered 1,169.3 kilometres, 7.4 litres per 100 kilometres, for a total cost of around about €177. So in old money, that's 727 miles at around about 38 miles per gallon, and at the time the conversion would be about £152. I wasn't overly impressed with the MPG, to be honest. I probably could have made slightly better use of the battery on one of the stints, but 38 MPG, not terrific. Overall then, the Lynk Co one was a pretty positive experience. For a brand with which I had no previous preconceptions, it performed okay, not quite as much as I would hope for 250 horsepower. The economy was slightly disappointing, but it was well equipped. The interior was nice, the materials felt good. Certainly, it was a more interesting choice than a Golf would have been. Big question then, would I buy one? If I was doing lots of motorway miles, then no, probably not. 38 MPG isn't great. However, if you're able to charge and you're able to make best use of that battery range, which was claimed 70 kilometres would be pretty good, then it would be a sensible choice. Although this one hadn't actually ever been charged from what I could see. The charge cable was still under the boot floor, sealed in the bag from the factory. Okay, that's all I've got for you in this video. I will do one final video on this car, which will be a review of the interior and some of the tech. So watch out for that popping up. In the meantime, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.